another Just 5 Mins. I think this one is Weekend Ramble number 1. Don't worry, I'm not going to do too many of these over the same weekend, but just little things that have cropped up there have piqued my interest and might pique yours, possibly. Anyway, what have we got? Well, there's two things sort of connected, but one, and I'll put the link below. Of late, I've been watching a little bit more about investing and things like that, just trying to get a handle on it. A little bit late in life to be discovering this, but anyway, I've got another podcast that I'm sort of trialing. What's going on with, it's called, and just a ramble. Who will listen? Who knows? Who wants to listen? Well, probably nobody. But anyway, it's just my humble, naive take on life generally. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. So today, for this ramble, I've got two. I'll put the links below in the show notes. But I've got one that jumped out, and it's the guy off The Big Short movie, or should I say the real guy that Steve Carell's character portrayed. And he does a lot of, like, every month on, is it, I don't know, one of the American money sort of talk show type things, talking about investments and things going on, the economy and blah, blah, blah. And of course, one thing that jumped out from this other link, a guy called Hamish Hodder, I think I'll put the link below. Anyway, quite an interesting thing, but it's really about the sort of like the new thing, of course, which isn't that new. And of course, it's AI, and all about the fact that, you know, how the investments are evolving. And of course, you've got the likes of Nvidia, which up until fairly recently, you know, I knew, obviously, Nvidia graphic cards, you know, that cost a fortune for your PC. That's another little side subject I'll go on shortly. I was thinking about that. Not that I'm a big gamer. I don't have time for that. But, you know, I like the idea of, you know, playing flight simulators. Sorry, I had to say that really quietly because it's quite embarrassing, isn't it? But anyway, but you do need a really good graphics card. So I was looking, I thought, okay, you know, laptops, you know, with decent graphics cards in. And most of them in the UK world, anyway, you know, you're up around about the £1,000 mark to get, you know, the top sort of Nvidia based laptop or something like that. Maybe cheaper for the PCs. Who knows? Who knows? I'm not a big gamer, but the point being is that's where I thought that's where I've heard Nvidia. And incidentally, I didn't realise, and a colleague told me about this ages ago, about the fact that Nvidia cloud gaming. Okay, and I sort of looked at it. I thought, okay, I know there's Xbox cloud games and, you know, all the other, I'm sure PlayStation have got their own and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, the point being is I never really got the Nvidia cloud thing. I thought, well, when I went there, it said, oh, you've got to own the games. I'm thinking, what the hell am I? Yeah, Nvidia GeForce Cloud. And I thought, well, what's the point in me signing up to play Nvidia Cloud as well as then having to own the games? But of course, I didn't realise that the main selling point, which is probably their marketing, I think they need to make this clear for dumb buggers like me. But anyway, but the point being is that, of course, you're renting. You can, there is a free plan, but then there's like, I think about $10 a month or something for the next one. And you get priority. You're basically hiring the hardware and it streams it to your machine. So instead of you going and buying a, I don't know, what are they? Must be £300-400 graphics card or £1,000, you know, laptop with an Nvidia 4050 or 4060 or whatever. Anyway, is that the point being is that you don't have to do that. You can stream it, so it'll play the things like Microsoft Flight Simulator. It'll play on an Nvidia based hardware and stream it to your machine. There's probably common sense for a lot of people, and maybe it's just me being really a bit silly, stupid and naive about it, but that finally clicked just a few weeks ago. Anyway, right, so back to Nvidia, back to what the heck this is about the investing thing. Well, the other big thing that Nvidia have been in for ages, and their stock price in the last year on year, it literally in the last year, has gone, I think something like 148% rise or something. It's sort of, I think it was close to surpassing Apple value, or it has possibly exceeded Apple's market cap. And it's because obviously the Nvidia GPUs that are also used in a lot of crypto mining, I might add, happen to be really, really good for processing massive AI type models as well, and data like that. So there's all of that. But where I'm coming to, and I think it's a Brit guy, Hamish Hodder, the video that's referencing that other sort of like a talk show for the finance, is saying that, and it's true that there's a big sort of pickup in there. At the moment, it feels a bit late to maybe invest in that. Like if you did a year ago, you, like say, 148% increase. Maybe there's still opportunities, and I think that isn't going away. And there's a lot of that most of that increase is to do with sales to data centers for all the specific AI hardware. Maybe we'll do a talk on that specifically, because there was a couple of decent sort of videos that I watched of late about exactly that, about the dedicated hardware. And of course, you've got Microsoft with their Copilot. Oh, goodness me, the name, I don't know. Copilot Plus PC, which, yeah, the naming, the branding, I don't think works personally. But hey, I'm not making billions of dollars, so there you go. But the point being is that they've got the NPU. So you've got a CPU, you've got your graphics processor unit, GPU, and you've got an NPU, which is the neural processor unit. So it's a chip especially for processing AI models on the machine. And I think this is where, going back to that video that I was watching, is alluding to there's an interesting, I don't know if it's a fork in the road, but there's certainly an interesting future where it seems to be those large language models like ChatGPT and all of those sorts of things, all the Geminis and Midjourney, all those things to do all the wonderful stuff. They're using massive power and taking lots of data center resources up to create all those LLMs basically. So where Microsoft, I think, and I'm sure Apple are not far behind. They mentioned something about the next iPhone and things using like essentially NPUs built in. And the Microsoft one I think is interesting, and I didn't really click it first of all, but the Copilot Plus PCs with the NPUs, they're going to be able to run not large language models, but ironically SLMs, which are small language models, which you think, hang on a minute, isn't that a backward step? But of course it isn't, because it depends what you really want to do, what you want to achieve. And for most things, and for what people really, I mean, there was a survey or something I read recently on the BBC, I think it was, where, the majority of people, there was the hype, and there still is the hype of all AI and ChatGPT, but the everyday person isn't really using it. Sure, they'll play with DALL-E and some of the image generators, and then that wears off, and they'll play around with all the other bits, but the hype bubble sort of pops really quickly. But anyway, the idea is that the small language models that can run on your machine, they can still possibly reference the cloud data. I'm sure they will, but there's all privacy things and all of this going on, isn't there? But anyway, the point being is that there's that focus on, I think what's going to happen is the small language models, and Microsoft have got, I think the one that's being touted at the moment is the Phi 3, PHI 3, Phi 3. that can run locally and is very powerful for what it can do locally. Okay, so I think there's quite an interesting sort of like observation there about the fact that I'm sure, and this is where that video references the guy from The Big Short, I forgot his name, Eisman, basically was saying, once it becomes like really embedded on your phone, like if Apple get that, but Google are trying with Gemini, but I must admit I haven't had a good response with Gemini on the Android world yet. The ChatGPT update that's coming very soon, I think it's mainly going to be on the iPhone, where that's that big hype where it's like that film Her, apparently, with Joaquin Phoenix, and where you can have a conversation and it's seeing things, and there's all privacy things there as well, isn't there? But anyway, but that sort of stuff is still, it's serving up on your phone, but it's still reliant on that massive LLM sort of and the infrastructure in the cloud. So you've got a real-time connection there. Okay, whereas these dedicated NPUs that are going to be in the devices on your phone, on your laptops, are going to be able to run isolated. They're not necessarily going to have to use those large language models to do most of the things. So I think there's quite an interesting thing, and where it ties with back to that video again, excuse me, is that investment sort of thing that, yeah, there's still, and it's not going to go away, that whole massive juggernaut of AI in the cloud, LLMs and everything. But I think that, we're getting that sort of like local experience on your laptop, your phone, or whatever it might be. Yeah, I think that's an interesting one to look out for. And the second one for this ramble, and by the way, notice I called it a ramble, which is why I can get away with it being way over 5 minutes. And in fact, this probably would have been a good candidate for the other podcast. But anyway, but the other one is the last few weeks has been quite tumultuous for these AI devices. So there's millions of people have covered the reviews. I haven't bothered. Because I'm not a big enough audience to get anything free. But also, like, there was the Humane AI pin. Okay, they were the ex-Apple engineers that created that sort of thing, and it's like a lapel thing. It magnetizes onto your shirt or something, or it's got a magnet clip or something, and it can ask things. There's no screen, but it beams like a laser display onto your palm of your hand. To be honest, it looks really cool, actually, but the reviews have been it's really brutal out there, isn't it? Anybody trying to innovate, it's always that they've got to have tough skins, because people are going to be throwing stuff at them. And a lot of the reviews for the Humane AI pin, when people got hold of it, were quite slating of it, really. It was slow, it was overheating. I think they've had a product recall for some of the batteries. And the last bit, I don't know how accurate this is that they're trying to sell, HP was possibly interested in buying the company. And I think it is. It's really tough because they're breaking new ground. It's meant to be touted as a replacement to your mobile phone. It's got a SIM card in it, so it can talk to the internet and the network and make calls and tell the time. And it's meant to do a lot more, but a lot of the reviews sort of didn't quite work out. There was a massive time lag in a lot of cases. And then that brings me on to like Rabbit R1, that little orangey red little square unit that has got a screen, but again, it was meant to be this AI machine, and again, that's come under a lot of criticism as well. But again, you can't blame these people for trying. I mean, there's a lot of effort and money and resources and whatever to go into these things, so it is a brutal world these days, especially with social media and everything, isn't it? I mean, software, it's hard anyway when you get kickbacks at that level, but hardware especially, there's a lot of physical things that have had to be made, and if you can't sell those things, that's not a good business model, is it? But anyway, the R1, again, you want to sort of feel like, that's cool device. And again, I think it was the Zoe Kleinman off BBC tech reporter said, she really did try it. And apart from telling the time and a few things like that, it didn't really work that well. And I think, again, the Rabbit R1 is a little bit cheaper because the Humane AI pin is, I think, somewhere up in the region of about $600 plus US, and you need a subscription because it's essentially got a cell phone, mobile phone connection there as well. The Rabbit R1, I'm not sure. I don't think it had a subscription, but it was a lot cheaper. I don't know what the price is now, but it was, I don't know, $150, $200, $250 maybe, or something like that. I don't have the details right in front of me. But the one that really jumps out, and I'll leave you with this, and I'll be quiet after this for a little bit, is essentially, it was called Rewind AI. I did cover it a little bit a few episodes ago, yet more, or rise of AI devices or something. But seriously, if I was to bet my money, which I'm not, and I don't even know if they're actually trading publicly anyway, but if I were to invest in a hardware device, I would be looking at this Rewind AI. Well, it's not called Rewind AI now because they rebranded themselves a few weeks ago at the time of this recording to Limitless.ai. So it's software, and it's meant to be doing things like, it's got software. At the moment, it's fairly basic, dare I say, in the fact that it can, sort of capture meetings and, summarize meetings and a few things like that, etc. I'm sure it's going to go a lot further, but they've also done a very clever thing, and I think they've learned already from things like Humane AI and Rabbit R1, but they've got a pendant, okay? And again, first of all, you sort of are not another one, but it's a very small thing. I don't know, I haven't got the size details in front of me, but it looks like the size of a button, just a slightly larger button. So really small, lots of different lovely colours. First of all, it's $99 US, so it's extremely cheap for what it can potentially be doing. There's no subscription, okay? So it doesn't have its own cell, mobile chip or anything like that. It's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so it hooks up to your phone essentially, or to your home network, or to your work network, or whatever. But it's got a lot of privacy stuff. I'm not going to go into it now, but a couple of the big things is you can have a look at the privacy thing. It's worth having a look on their website. I think they are certainly trying to make it as private and as secure as possible. But what this thing does, it pins onto your shirt, blazer, blouse, whatever, ear. I think you could probably even magnetize it on the side of your ear, maybe, because it's small enough, and it's got like a little magnetic clasp type thing. But it is small enough. It's weatherproof. It's got really good audio, aluminium, 100-hour battery life. There's no screen or anything. But the point being is that it's got audio, so you can hear things. It's Bluetooth, so I guess you can put Bluetooth headphones in. USB-C, which is always a good thing, so it's nice and standard. But the point being is it can record like a conversation. Like if I'm just having a conversation now, it can record that, summarize it, do all sorts of stuff during your day. But one of the privacy things that jumped out that I thought was quite interesting is that when you set it up, it can recognize your voice and record only that, allegedly. But you can actually ask another person. So if you're in a meeting in a coffee shop or whatever, you can ask that person, are you okay for us to record this meeting? Just like you do on Zoom or Teams or whatever. And then it will allow that other person to be recorded, and it'll summarize that meeting. I think it's brilliant, with the caveat that you've got to have that privacy check, definitely. And again, you want to have a look at that website about the privacy or privacy, whichever way you say that, and you can make your own decision. But honestly, for $99, I'm on the pre-order, definitely. I think that's one device that is worth. It's not expensive enough to think, okay, if it doesn't work out, I don't want to waste stuff anyway. In fact, I've still got really old gadgets and stuff that I feel very, it's very difficult to throw away or recycle, and I really, really should. But this is like $99 US. I think it's worth a punt. And what they're trying to do is get that sweet spot where Humane AI and Rabbit R1, I think, dare I say, failing. And I say that, you know, from a complete outsider. I know there's a lot of work, and I'm sure these are new devices. These are the early days of that, so there's probably a lot of potential there. But the limitless AI pendant, I think, is hitting that sweet spot. It's connecting to your already existing thing that you're carrying around with you, your phone, or your Wi-Fi network wherever you are. Again, security, you've got to go and check and all that sort of stuff. But the fact is, it's blending that just enough of the hardware to actually, make it really worthwhile, but not trying to reinvent a whole new market. And that's difficult. That's really tricky, because given the fact that mobile phones like iPhone, Android phones, or whatever, the Microsoft Copilot Plus PC, which is such a mouthful, they're all getting these NPUs. They're all going to be able to process SLMs, small language models, still have access to your chat GPTs anyway. But all that processing is going to happen on the devices that you already own. Okay. And especially when it really hits the mobile devices. I think the things like Humane AI and Rabbit R1, I have to say, I don't think they're going to actually, they're going to have to evolve into essentially a phone version. And then you think, well, what's the point? But this limitless AI pendant, I'm not, selling it, by the way. I've got no affiliation. I don't think they would even consider giving me one free anyway. But for $99, it's reasonable. And I think it's worth definitely a look. So that is really a weekend ramble. I think you might even need the whole weekend to even digest that. But that's what I've got. Back to the normal, just 5 minutes-ish for the next ones until the next ramble. So take care, and we'll catch you on the next one.